missing our master of ceremonies right now, and we're missing the government representative, so it's good to see that we wait, so we'll have to make a while. Thanks.
Good afternoon to all. The Humanistic Solidarity Association, St. Lucia, Cuba, in association, or in collaboration rather, with the Cuban Embassy of the Republic, the Cuban Embassy of the Republic of Cuba, puts on our first major activity for the second quarter, always a very exciting activity, as it always deals with activities such as paying tribute to Fidel, the commemoration of the revolution on the 31st of December, etc. So by way of protocol, I'd just like to start by acknowledging what is a long and distinguished list of persons. I'd first like to recognize and acknowledge the presence of Dr. Virginia Albert Poyet, OBE, Minister of Public Service, Home Affairs, Labor, and Gender Affairs, and founder of the first Cuba-St. Lucia Friendship Association. Also, ambassadors present include, of course, our guests, Ambassador His Excellency Bernardo Toscano Salinas, and Mrs. Salinas is not present, but the Ambassador for Cuba is here. Ambassador and permanent representatives of St. Lucia to the United Nations and the Caribbean community, a former educator, Ms. Rosemary Husbands-Mafre, and St. Lucia's Parliamentary Commissioner, Dr. Rosemary Husbands-Mafre, that is. Then we've got the manager of the Chinese properties, is he around? Dr. Emilio Balesta Perez, head of the Cuban Medical Brigade, Dr. Romilio Penez Gonzalez, head of the Cuban Eye Clinic in St. Lucia, members of the Cuban Brigade, past and present executive members of the Humanistic Solidarity Association, in particular the immediate past executive like Brother Harvey, the president, former president, Dr. Williams, and Brother Moffat. Specially invited guests, members from the Venezuelan embassy, brothers and sisters, specially invited guests, colleagues, and to our enthusiastic followers on the virtual media, whether it would be Zoom, YouTube, or Jitsi. We welcome you to the fifth ceremony of the passing of the eternal commander of the revolution, of the Cuban Revolution. We welcome you as well as an opportunity for us to formally meet and greet the resident ambassador for Cuba, and also, as we go along the program, the other highlights and moments that will be highlighted by the President and others. It is a sort of family reunion. It is also an opportunity for us to take stock of the last year, which has been very challenging. So it is indeed a great honor for me to formally welcome everyone. By way of as a formal start, we normally start with the national anthems, and we'd invite all of you to stand for the singing of the Cuban national anthem, which is now in cue, and you'll remain standing afterwards for the St. Lucia national anthem. National anthem. Lucia, love the land that gave us birth, land of beaches, hills and valleys, fairest sign of all the earth, wheresoever you may roam, love, oh love, I am home. All lands and nations fathom, for this day of the West, gone the days when strife and discord bring the children's thorn and rest. Northern lands of brighter day stretches out a new way. May the good Lord bless our island, father, sons from poor and home. May your people live united, strong in soul and strong in heart. Justice, truth, and charity, our ideal forever be. In our own way and as a group, we will all, in our individual way, observe a minute's silence for those who have gone before us, particularly those who have made contribution to our respective societies. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Muchas gracias. We now move along to the significant, or the first part of this afternoon's program, and it involves remarks by a very important person, a dynamic person who has been the driving force of this organization, St. Lucia, Cuba's Humanistic Solidarity Association. I refer to our very own Marlene Alexander, president of the association.
Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I would like to say thank you for your patience, because we actually was running late, so thank you. The Honorable Virginia Albert Poyer, Minister for the Public Service, Home Affairs, Labor and Gender Relations. Ambassador His Excellency Bernardo Toscano Sardinas and his wife Barbara Romain Charez. Ambassador Anthony Severin, first St. Lucia Ambassador to Cuba, non-resident. Ambassador and former educator, Dr. Rosemary Husband-Mathurin, Parliamentary Commissioner. Juan Chavera, Consulate, Venezuelan Embassy. Dr. Alvelio Emilio Perez, head of the Cuban Medical Brigade in St. Lucia. Dr. Romelio Pina Gonzalez, head of the Cuban Eye Clinic in St. Lucia. Colleagues, Cuban Medical Brigade, members past members and present members of the Humanistic Solidarity Association. Special mention of former president of the HSA, Brother Raul Harvey. Colleague speakers, Comrade Earl Busquet and Comrade Pel Lancico. Specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, and to all our viewers online, a very special welcome. It is my honor to warmly welcome you to this special gathering. On this occasion, to mark 3 significant anniversaries as it relates to St. Lucia and Cuba. But before I proceed, I wish to take this opportunity to officially welcome Ambassador His Excellency Bernardo Toscano Sardinas and his wife, Barbara Cherez, to St. Lucia. Welcome. So could you help me? This is our new ambassador to Cuba. This is his first. To our first public event since your arrival in St. Lucia, mainly due to the pandemic challenges. We hope your diplomatic journey in St. Lucia, especially with the HSA family, will be a very fruitful and memorable one, and that you will experience the hospitality of our people. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me again in saying a special welcome to our ambassador to St. Lucia, because we have not met before. Today we also acknowledge HSA's 16th anniversary and the 42nd anniversary of bilateral relations between St. Lucia and Cuba. In particular, and in a very special way, we pay tribute to the memory and legacy of the historical leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro, in commemoration of the 5th anniversary of his death on November 25th, 2016, at the age of 90. Fidel Castro was a unique and extraordinary leader of our times, whose vision and policies continues to manifest itself worldwide. Fidel was a true friend to Latin America and the Caribbean countries, especially with assistance in areas where there were scarce resources, such as healthcare personnel and educational scholarships in various disciplines. St. Lucia has been the recipient of approximately 900 scholarships from Cuba to date. And I feel privileged to be associated with HSA, which was conceived out of the love for the people of Cuba. Brother Harvey, former president, I'm sure will enlighten you further on this matter. Notwithstanding Cuba's challenges, with over 60 years of harsh and unjust blockade by the US, Cuba continues to amazingly survive and assisting thousands of people with their first-class healthcare and education system, which embraces everyone. During this unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, Cuba was at the forefront with human resource capacity in over 20 countries. From the onset, St. Lucia welcomed 113 Cubans attached to the Henry Reeves Brigade to assist in the fight against the pandemic. However, this does not only represent support to St. Lucia during the pandemic war, but it also represents the solidarity, collaboration, and the deep bonds of friendship which have existed between Cuba and St. Lucia for over 42 years. I wish to take this opportunity to publicly applaud the Cubans working within our various sectors and express our profound gratitude for the great sacrifice you continue to do against adversity. Without a doubt, our healthcare facilities are functioning more effective and efficiently with your presence to our shores. So, For all these reasons, and many more, too numerous to mention, today, we gladly and happy to pay tribute to the memory of the iconic leader, Fidel Castro, whose unique personality continue to absorb the world. Once again, welcome and do enjoy your presence here with us today. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a few seconds to acknowledge the members of the executive of our association. As many of you here would know, that being involved in an association of this nature is a labor of love, is a voluntary activity. So I take the opportunity to briefly recognize this first Vice President, Pel Lancico, the second Vice President, Selva Wilson, also both of whom are former students who study in Cuba. Then there is Cyril Mangal, President of the Cycling Association, but very active on our executive, and Mr. Richard, be recognized, right? Arlene Rene comes in from time to time on the very special programs that we have. I am your Secretary, Nicolas Jabatis. So these are the members who assist in keeping the association alive and well, even during trying times. I now take the opportunity to introduce someone who will look at the second limb of this evening's activities, and that it has to do with the 16th anniversary of the HSA. And there's nobody more qualified to speak on that than one of the founding members, Comrade Roll Harvey. A warm welcome.
Good afternoon. Protocol having been established, I would like to go straight into my presentation. However, before doing so, I would like personally to congratulate and say thank you to, not thank you, but welcome, Dr. Virginia Poyet, who was present at the launching of our association at the Comprehensive School, if you remember, and ambassador to St. Lucia. Today we are remembering the passing of Comrade Fidel. And as you Cuban people will know, Comrade Fidel was a very humanistic person. I experienced the humanism of Comrade Fidel when I was in Cuba in 2004-2005. I had to go to Cuba for a surgery at the oncological hospital, and I was about to die. I was going to die, really. If I wasn't in Cuba, if I was anywhere else, I wouldn't be here. But before that, we also had the first president of our association, the late Brother Elliot Francis, who had gone to Cuba previous to me. In those days, we were very political. We were members of the executive members of the St. Lucia Labour Party. Brother Francis was the treasurer, and I was the welfare officer of the St. Lucia Labour Party. This was in 2003, 2004. Brother Francis was also in a very bad condition when he left here. He came back and we had an executive meeting, and he mentioned that he got very good attention in Cuba, and we should try to help Cuba and do all in our best to widen the understanding of Cuba to our St. Lucian people. Because it is not very long ago that people in St. Lucia, not only St. Lucia, the Caribbean, and probably the wider world, didn't think very much of Cuba because of the American propaganda. They had a very good propaganda machine, and it worked very well. And Brother Elliot having to go back to Cuba and myself in Cuba. And while we were there, our good friend Comrade Lancico was the charge d'affaires of the St. Lucia Embassy in Cuba. Anyhow, to make a long story short, because they told me my time is limited, after the surgery, after my surgery, and Elliot left Cuba before me, but after my surgery, I'm leading up to the association. I asked a very good friend of ours, who Earl knows very well, I said, Otto, Brother Otto, we got such good attention in Cuba. And it was attention with the feeling, with humanism. You know, this is something that Cuba was known for, at least while I was there. The feeling, the doctors, the nurses, the medical personnel, they all showed love and interest in your case. That was in 2000, 2004. So I asked Brother Otto, Cuba have been so good to us. What can we do to show our appreciation for Cuba? Because I felt I owed Cuba. All the medical attention I got, also Elliot, was for free. They didn't charge us anything. And this was done through the collaboration of our parties, the St. Lucia Labour Party being a fraternal member of a fraternal member with the Cuban Communist Party. Otto said to me, Brother Harvey, you all don't have to do anything for us. However, we do not have an active solidarity movement in St. Lucia. If you will go back and start a solidarity organization, this is all you will have to do for Cuba. I came back, mentioned to Elliot, because Elliot was even closer to Otto than I was. And Elliot he moved like a jet, well, himself and myself. And also Rossini Francois, departed brother. And we went the length and breadth of the island, trying to solicit support for the launching or for the establishment of the Humanistic Solidarity Association. We didn't have that name at the time. We were talking, you know. We had a meeting at the comprehensive school. This is prior to the launching of the association. And Dr. Janil Stanley was there and Dr. Lendor. And they said, we already have a St. Lucia Friendship Association. Why don't we join all of these together? So I said I had no problem. Elliot was chairing the meeting. So we said, well, let's ask the people, because some people were for a new association, like me, and there were some who wanted to continue with the St. Lucia Friendship Association. And it was put to the vote, and the majority of members decided that we should start a new association, because the St. Lucia Friendship Association, Cuba Friendship Association, was not really active. Nothing was happening. They might have had one or two members who might, you know, try to keep things going, but it was not active. So it was because of this meeting that we decided then to form the St. Lucia Cuba Humanistic Solidarity Association, which we had to change to the name to Humanistic Solidarity Association, because legally, I think Brother Valen John was part of that. They said we couldn't put St. Lucia before humanistic or something. We had to bring it after. St. Lucia should be after, not before. You know. Also at that time, we had our first Cuban our first Cuban ambassador, Victor Ramirez. And he too was very eager to get this new association going. So with the help of the Cuban Embassy, which we worked with, at least which I worked with up to 2017, we went about forming the association. We had several meetings, like I said, before the actual date. And our present guest speaker is, she was at the launching, Dr. Albert was at the launching. And out of that launching was Brother Elliot Francis, now deceased, was the first president. I myself was first vice president. Brother Compton Francois was the second vice president, and he was the president of the South Committee. We have a committee from Beaufort, Choiseul, a part of the same association, but because, you know, our island's not as big as Cuba, obviously, or Venezuela. But we thought we could have gotten a lot of members from down the south to give support instead of having to come all the way to Castries when we were having meetings. Also, at that time, we had the Mission Milagro program. And the humanism that was being displayed, like I said, by Cuba at the time, we thought that humanistic would have been a good word. We had our late, from one of our late members, Brother Lubin, said, regardless to what we do, we should mention solidarity. So we ended up calling the association the Humanistic Solidarity Association. To go on with the executive, we had Brother Irvin John, he was the treasurer. Sister Samantha Michelle, she was the secretary. And we had the floor members, Jean Francis, Callista McLawrence, and Brother Lubin. Rossini was also public relations officer, and Brother Pelancico was regional and international director, because he's a very good writer, and when you give him a chance to speak, he cannot stop. He doesn't stop. He keeps you, and he's always, you know, he's always got your attention. And we thought that if we had to go to be represented anywhere, that Peter Lancico would have been the person to do that. So that was our first executive. Many of our members are persons who had gone to Cuba for eye care treatment. We got up over 300 plus members, not active, obviously. But because of the humanism in the humanistic nature of our treatment, Elliot, myself, and those people, this is where we got the name humanistic from, because we didn't get many graduates of Cuba to join the association. There were some, like Dr. Stanley, Dr. Lendor. Dr. Stanley had lent the association support from the inception. Also from the inception, I must remember, was Rosanna. I want you to stand a minute, Rosanna, please. And Brother Richards, please. These two people especially have stuck with the association from day one in giving diligent and ardent support, not asking a question. We have 5 students who were awarded scholarships through the association. Brother Silva, please. Brother Silva Wilson was our first student and the only one that I've seen active in the association. Well, the first one, she's in Cuba working still, mind you. She went to Canada. That was Melissa Francois. And she's back in Cuba working for the same thing that the Cubans work for. So she should be complimented, because she could be making a lot of money in Canada, as you know. But at least she have a heart. She want to pay back. She want to give back something. And then there's Dr. Chico. I don't see her here. I thought she would have. And then there's one other student, the last one. She's still in Cuba and probably will stay in Cuba for a while. And she's going to work in Cuba. Apparently she fell in love with Cuba and fell in love with a Cuban boyfriend too. Got a Cuban. So she might be there for quite some time. Yeah. Yeah. So this is, I gave you an outline of how the association was formed or what brought about the association. We've had Brother Rossini, who have gone on. We've got Brother Lubin, who have also gone on. We've got Brother Elliot Francis, who was the first president. So those are 3 members of our original executive who have gone on the other side. Then we've had the contribution of Brother Morris Moffat, who was our public relations director for a number of years, and Dr. Gregor, who was the chair of the education committee. And we got Brother Velen John. Brother Velen, stand a minute, please. Brother Velen John was the chairperson of the committee for the Cuban 5. You remember we had a lot of problems with the Cuban 5 that were in prison in the United States. And Brother Velen John did a good job and represented St. Lucia well. He even addressed one of our May-Day meetings at the convention center. So he made his contribution as well. There might be others who might have made contributions who don't come to mind. But we're here today now up with Sister Marlene and Brother Nick and your new executive, who will carry on from where I left off. I stepped down in 2017, and I have been out of the state most of the last 3 years, coming and going out of the state. So I wish the association well, and I'm sure you all do too. And Marlene would have, and Nick and other executive members would have your own agenda to carry the association forward. But our initial objectives in forming the association was to establish and engender cordial and open relations with Cuba, to promote excursion visits to Cuba from among our people, to allow our people to see the real Cuba. Because there are many people who doesn't think that what in Cuba exists in Cuba. And through our excursions, we're able to change the minds of many of those people. I remember when Morris landed in Cuba for the first time, he said, "Are we in Cuba? Is this Cuba?" But not only him. There are many people that are surprised when they go and they see the real Cuba. And Sister Marlene, I'm throwing this out to you now too. If there are 2 people that I would like to see go to Cuba, it is Sister Rosanna and Brother Richards. We have to make it possible that we accommodate those 2 people to see the real Cuba, because they've supported Cuba and they've never gone to Cuba. At least Brother Lubin went to Cuba. Brother Rossini, all of the other members went to Cuba. Irvin went to Cuba many times. But these 2 people from day one, from the same day that Dr. Poyet was there with us, these 2 people was there with us, like Brother Lantico. So I would like, and I wanted to do that before I stepped down as president, but I will do my best to ensure that any next excursion, we do our best that Brother Richards and Sister Rosanna visit Cuba. We've also assisted many people to receive medical attention in Cuba. This was my work. I enjoyed doing this. We helped many people. People had so much confidence, some people, in the medical system in Cuba, that even when Cuba sent back and said it doesn't make sense coming, because they thought that that patient might have been too far gone and that there was nothing that they could do, still wanted to go. I remember there's a gentleman. We said, but Cuba said there's nothing they can do for you. You're too far gone. He said they will do. Ambassador Hugo was the ambassador at the time. He said, Cuba is not God. Cuba can do many things, but Cuba is not God. So if they see that, he still went to Cuba, but he died in Cuba. That individual. He still went to Cuba because he was so convinced in his mind that he could get well in Cuba. And this is one thing, collaborators, that I want you to understand and I want you to continue to do. To continue to show the love, to continue to show the attention, because this is what our people expect from you. Sometimes they might not expect it from our own people, but once you say Cuba or Cuban, they expect additional attention. They expect you to give the humanism. They expect you to show the same attention you show your own Cuban people. And our 1st Brigade gave the solution, that feeling. They showed it. I'm sorry. And the other thing we had to do was scholarships. And we were awarded 5 scholarships over those 17 years, over those 17, 12, 16 years. However, that program for the scholarship is now finished. Thank you very much.
Just to re-emphasize, thank you, Brother Harvey, good and faithful servant. You're the reason I'm here today. I've had some misgivings over the years, that's why I'm still here, but I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I'm still committed to the association. Thank you very much, Brother Harvey. I'm glad the day you personally invited me to join the association. Our next presenter or speaker will give a perspective on of the last 42 years or so, St. Lucia, Cuba, ambassadorial links or the bilateral relationship. I take pride in knowing that I share a certain perspective with him, be spectacle like him, and maybe lack of hair. But one of the things I enjoyed about that is, as far as I am concerned, and I pride myself in looking back a lot at history and politics, is that he's one of the first high-profile ambassadors we've had in St. Lucia. I mean, I've heard of Dr. Barry Ogis. I saw him with his stick walking around many years ago, and also I can identify with the voice of who was it? The one who represented at Lome and Dr. It wasn't Dr. Carrington, but at the Lome conventions. Mr. Sovereign, experienced civil servant and an ambassador plenipotentiary for many years, very experienced, as the article says out there, one of the first ambassadors to represent us in Cuba, enormous experience. So I have great pleasure in calling him to share his perspective with us. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador. Mr. Ambassador, I'm pumping your shift.
Minister Albert Poyot, Ambassador Cardenas, Madam President Marlene Alexander, colleagues, comrades, in the interest of time, let me adopt the protocol that has been established. I have been asked to offer some brief remarks on the 42nd anniversary, or the last 42 years of bilateral relations between St. Lucia and Cuba. Let me say at the outset that the 42nd anniversary of bilateral relations can only be a reference to state-to-state relations. And it overlooks the terribly important people-to-people relations, which in the case of St. Lucia and Cuba covers a much longer period, and it constitutes the essential and solid foundation of the current state-to-state relations. But perhaps that story of people-to-people relations, some of which you've heard a while ago, is a story for another time. The establishment of bilateral relations between St. Lucia and Cuba followed very quickly upon the attainment of St. Lucia's political independence in 1979, and in August 1979 to be exact, hence the reference to the 42 years. Generally, bilateral relations are easy to map out and to trace. In the case of St. Lucia and Cuba, those relations are underlined by development cooperation along south-south lines, with specific activities that are easy to itemize. And so it is possible for us to refer to facts and to statistics, and to say with a measure of assurance that St. Lucia has benefited tremendously through its relationship with Cuba over the last 42 years. We can say that our two countries have enjoyed a tremendously successful relationship involving cooperation across a broad range of development fields. We can refer to, as was mentioned before, the hundreds of young St. Lucians who have benefited from university-level training in medicine, in nursing, in engineering and other critical disciplines. We can refer to the thousands of St. Lucians of all ages. I think we speak about 3,000 or so who have traveled to Cuba under the Operation Milagro or the Miracle Eye Care Program to have their eyesight restored. We can refer to the Cuban medical brigades, which have now become a constant and regular feature of the St. Lucian healthcare system. And those brigades have been extended quite naturally in recent times to include the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. We can refer to coaching programs in various sporting disciplines. We can refer to initiatives aimed at social integration in the area of mental health and wellness. And I could go on and on to reference initiatives in agriculture, in the environment, in construction, etc., etc. But I have deliberately not gone into the details of the various interventions that I have pointed to, because the interventions and the details, I believe, are well known, and some of them have already been outlined here this afternoon. The vast majority of St. Lucians have been impacted in some positive way, directly or indirectly, as a result of the St. Lucia-Cuba relationship, and are generally very much aware of the details of that relationship. But what escapes public knowledge, however, is the character of those relations. Comrades, over the last 42 plus years, the bilateral relations of St. Lucia and Cuba have been characterized by a sad imbalance that finds St. Lucia constantly on the receiving end of the generosity and sacrifice of the Cuban people. It is an imbalance that is being addressed, but I must tell you that throughout that period, and in spite of the many obvious manifestations of its friendship, Cuba has never, ever asked for anything in return. And it appears to me that this is the hallmark of true friendship. And I want you exactly. Within the last decade, the notion of reciprocity has been cleverly crafted by developed countries into the language and practice of development cooperation. to the point where a growing number of developing countries now consider it an acceptable plank in their relations with developed countries. But this country called Cuba, itself a developing country in need of critical assistance, constantly under external threat, and which has endured since February 1962. If we can think back, some 60 years ago, it has endured the weight of an economic embargo steeped in hypocrisy and injustice. And that country has refused to entertain the notion of reciprocity in its relations with other developing countries, including Cuba. Including St. Lucia, sorry. Cuba has never, as I said before, sought reciprocal treatment from us in spite of all that it has given. And I maintain that it is this characteristic, and not so much the itemized interventions which we mention all the time, which makes the St. Lucia-Cuba relationship so special and so worthy of celebration. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm conscious of the time, and so I want to end my brief remarks with a suggestion that notwithstanding the numerous interventions which constitute important signposts along the road of development cooperation between St. Lucia and Cuba over the last 42 plus years, it is perhaps the character of the relationship that will stand as a beacon to guide and inspire us for the next 42 years and beyond. Long live the friendship between St. Lucia and Cuba. Long live.
Now that the record and the history has been presented and done in a way that we all understand, it is now the time for us to accept tributes. In other words, we are now dealing with the tribute section. And for this purpose, we'll start with Dr. Arvilio Emilio Ballester Perez, head of the Cuban Medical Brigade in St. Lucia. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. It's really very comfortable to hear the story of the relationship between St. Lucia and Cuba, and of course knowing the strength of the Humanistic Solidarity Association in St. Lucia. I can tell you that all the Cubans present here today, we are feeling really, really happy for this strength and this friendship that we have here with you. His Excellency Bernardo Toscano Sardegna, Cuban Ambassador in St. Lucia, Mrs. Marlene Alexander, President of the Humanistic Solidarity Association, St. Lucia, Cuba, member of the Humanistic Solidarity Association, dear colleagues, member of the Cuban Medical Brigade in St. Lucia, distinguished guests. We humans remember dates, we mark our calendars, count the days, not the coincidence. Beyond the personal, our appreciation of date is extended to those we love. No one forgets the birthday or the final goodbye of a loved one. And these days become our own as long as they have meaning, make us happy or sad. Last November 25th, no one in the world was unaware that 5 years ago, a being destined for eternal life left this world to live within us and in those who will follow us. He did not set out to do that, but he filled his hours with actions determined to free Cuba forever from shameful imperial domination and to build a new nation. There was not a single day in Fidel's existence that does not deserve to be remembered, because what he did for his people demanded uninterrupted constancy in action and thought. These 5-year periods have done nothing to erase his presence even for a second. At the defining moments our homeland continued to face, Fidel breathed, is reborn, and points the way to a future in revolution, his future and ours. Last November 15 was one of those days when a multiplied and firm Fidel, present in millions of Cubans, hit a home run against the destabilizing plan designed by the usual enemies. Once again, they underestimated Cuba as a nation, and especially they underestimated the youth. You will remember that 5 years ago, we took the secret oath, I am Fidel. Fidel is among us, and just like his worthy, honorable works, he is multiplying the infinite gratitude of those who deeply value his noble deeds. I would like to offer our gratitude to the government and the people of St. Lucia, and especially to this Humanistic Association who every year organize this tribute, to remember a man who never asked for recognition, but who always fought for the poorest, ensuring that the better world is always possible. 5 years ago, he left us physically, but he did not die, because those who bring light and plant the seed of the future in a world as human as his revolution don't never die. In it, he is reborn every day. His legacy belongs to the present, to the future, and we need it like oxygen, because there are always dazzling answers in Fidel illuminated about what is happened and what can happen. It is the moral strength of a leader who always inspires the inexhaustible intellectual heritage of an unusual man who became a fertile seed in the feeling of millions, the living legend of a guy who, in reality, does not need more qualifier than his own name, Fidel. Allow me to say in Spanish, patria o muerte, venceremos. Hasta la victoria siempre.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Arvilio. Our next presenter, ladies and gentlemen, is one whose relationship, it is fair to say, extends beyond 42 years of relationships with Cuba, and he'll probably tell you why. He's one of the leading and veteran journalists, both in the print and electronic media. I still remember his days with the Crusader and IRIA, and since then he has been associated with all of the leading newspapers in St. Lucia. He has been a leading correspondent in the region for Cana, as well as the Latin American version of CNN, you'll probably remind, and Al Jazeera as well. He's a good friend of Cuba. He's been involved with associations that have established links with Cuba. So I have no difficulty in welcoming and asking you to give Brother Earl Bousquet a warm welcome to make his presentation also nice.
Good afternoon, and welcome everyone. Minister for the Public Service, Virginia Albert Poyot, Ambassador Bernardo, President of the Association, St. Lucians, Cubans, Friends of Cuba, Friends of St. Lucia, and our Cuban friends online who are following us at home and abroad, our friends in Venezuela who are following us from at home and abroad. I want to follow up on all that has been said by going back to the historicity of the relationship between St. Lucia and Cuba, from the standpoint that we have looked at the friendship, we have looked at the people-to-people relationships, we have looked at the political relationships that have developed over time, but the history that has brought St. Lucia and Cuba together has preceded all of us, preceded all of our parents, goes all the way back to our forefathers having been brought to these parts as slaves to provide free labor for the development of countries. And as our anthem says, gone the days when nations battled for this Helen of the West. But there were many battles, 14 between France and England alone. But I want to go back to the very first one when we talk about our wars of independence. That after the French Revolution in 1789, it didn't take 10 years for the revolution for the War of Independence to be launched in St. Lucia. A republic was established in St. Lucia after the French Revolution of 1789. So much so that that Republic of St. Lucia was destroyed in 1796 when the French and the British had to get together to beat the Neg-Mahons of St. Lucia, the Maroons of those days, the runaway slaves. And our dear brother Gregor Williams, who has contributed so much to our understanding of our history, who is here with us today, and I'd like us to give him a special applause. And Gregor, who has helped generations better understand our history, has put us in a place where today we could point out that we had a Republic of St. Lucia, a revolution in St. Lucia after the French Revolution and before the Haitian Revolution of 1804. Yes, we had it here. And we went to school and we learned about the grand old Duke of York, 10,000 men, who marched them up to the top of the hill and marched them back down again. That grand old Duke of York was defeated right here in Castries, St. Lucia. That hill was Montfortune when the French and the British could not do it with their 10,000 men. They came together with 17,000 and they were marched back down the hill. And in 1796, they were able to overcome them, the French and the British together, and took the leaders of that revolution, put them on a ship called the London, set sail to put them in jail in England, and the London crashed. And today as we speak, there are those of us who are trying to get those bones of those St. Lucian heroic Neg-Mahon back to St. Lucia. We know where they are. We're trying to get them, and the British government is saying that those bones should be going back to Africa because they were Africans. No, they were St. Lucians. And I have gone there to say that our struggles are joined. The first Cuban Revolution in 1868, a 10-year war that lasted 10 years, 1868 to 1878. The Second War of Independence later on started by Jose Marti, 1895 to 1898, and the Third War of Independence in Cuba that ended on the 1st of January 1959. And as Fidel always said, there was one war of independence in Cuba. It started in 1868 and it ended in 1959. And after our War of Independence was destroyed in 1796, I cannot remember reading of any other, but we were able to negotiate our new slavery in the form of colonial independence in 1979. But the history that we celebrate today goes back to the earlier days when St. Lucians went to Cuba to work on the sugar plantations as sailors, as regular workers in Cuba. And then in 1978, that historic event, the 11th World Festival of Youth and Students, took place in Havana from July 26th to August 5th of that year. And it is a very historic year for what we are doing today, because every Caribbean country, independent or not, in 1978 was represented at the 11th World Festival of Youth and Students. And St. Lucia's delegation had only one woman out of the 5. And let us acknowledge that one woman among the 5 youth and students who visited Cuba and established that first direct progressive political relationship with Cuba. Please give her a round of applause, our Minister of Public Service. The other 4 members of that team, Justice Mario Michel, Lawrence Poyot, Alan Amedy in the UK, and yours truly. We're all alive. And it was following the establishment of that first contact in 1978 that when we came back home, we established the St. Lucia Cuba Friendship Association that lasted until 2001 or 2, when it was succeeded by the current association. But I thought we should look at that history because it takes us to a place where today, 42, 43 years later, we have to take the relationship between St. Lucia and Cuba to the next logical level. We have the political relationship, we have the peoples-to-peoples relationship, we have the friendship. We have to take that relationship to the next logical level. We had 900 St. Lucians who graduated in Cuba. Are 9 of them here tonight? No. We have to get those 900 St. Lucians who graduated in Cuba to be integrated in the work of the St. Lucia Cuba Humanistic Solidarity Association. We have a cabinet of ministers in St. Lucia today that is no stranger to Cuba. A tad sweetening my tea with dirty sugar. We need to get clean sugar for St. Lucians from Cuba. Cuba has 5 vaccines. to fight COVID. They have been approved by the World Health Organization. Cuba is ready to make them available to the world. And I would like to know that St. Lucia's application for the Cuban vaccines is already in. And if it's not in, on our behalf, we should ask our minister, our cabinet minister, to let the cabinet know on Monday when they meet that this meeting has called on the government of St. Lucia to do everything to ensure that we are the first in the OECS to have the Cuban vaccine. And the historicity of our relationship was sealed earlier this year. On the 26th of July, 1953, the attack on the Moncada barracks opened the way for the subsequent triumph of the revolution on the 1st of January, 1959. July 26, 1953. July 26, 2021, the St. Lucia Labour Party won the general elections in St. Lucia, bringing that date, July 26, in Cuba and St. Lucia, having separate meanings, but the day is a day that St. Lucians and Cubans will remember forever. So I can go on and on, but I cannot. Entonces, en nombre de todos pioneros de relaciones entre Santa Lucia y Cuba, venceremos. La lucha continua. Thank you.
Es muy bien, Comrade Urbusque. Okay. I just thought it would be good to put in perspective as well that Brother Urbusque has served as the attaches to two leading prime ministers in the areas, Dr. Chedi Jagan as well as Dr. Kenny Anthony. But as you can see, he's not just a veteran broadcaster, but an analyst, a writer, and indeed a historian. And you can imagine if you combine, if one combines, as I said, the struggle continues, particularly in knowing our history. So if we combine the knowledge of Brother Earl, Dr. Gregor Williams, Dr. Rosemary Masren, and other persons there who have done so much, as well as Dr. Poyot, who will be introduced later on. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct pleasure and honor to call on our second vice president, who I sometimes regard as the ideological director of our organization. Our first vice president, Brother Peter Lancico.
Good afternoon, comrades. The protocol having been established, I shall not engage in protocol this afternoon. I have too much to say in the little time that Marlene has allowed me to speak. I am very emotional today, following on the heels of the emotions of my comrade Roll Harvey. The emotions that we saw from Comrade Roll Harvey today has everything to do with his love for the people of Cuba. Roll knows something that most St. Lucians don't know. Brother Roll knows the truth about Cuba. Brother Roll knows that Cuba is a loving country with loving people. And that's why he got so emotional today. So let's give Brother Roll Harvey another round of applause for his love for Cuba. And I don't have a speech written because I like to think on Fidel. I like to do like Fidel. I spent 6 years in Cuba as a student. Every night, before I went to sleep, I listened to Fidel's speeches. And when I used to be on the street, liming in the barrios, I would go to places where you met people who were progressive, and we spoke about Fidel and we discussed Fidel. We loved Fidel with a passion. And I tell you something, my brothers and sisters. It is a pity that we have not gotten yet to the stage in our human development where we could have kept the brain of Fidel after he died. I would have loved for us to be able to keep that powerful brain, Fidel Castro Rus's brain, if we could have kept it hooked up to some machine so we could continue to enjoy his intelligence and his strength of character forever. It's a pity we hadn't gotten to that stage yet when Fidel died. My brothers and sisters, Earl said that he is still alive. Let me tell you what I listened to this morning in a speech from Fidel. In Nicaragua, on the 10th of July, 1980, Fidel Castro arrived in Nicaragua to celebrate the triumph of the Nicaraguan Revolution at the time. I call it the Nicaraguan Revolution. And Fidel gave a little joke. He was saying that when the mercenaries left Nicaragua to go to Cuba, that's the Playa Huron mercenaries, when they left Nicaragua that morning to go to Cuba to try to upset the Cuban Revolution, Anastasio Somoza, the then president of he was a tyrant, he was a dictator. When they left Nicaragua at a place called Puerto Cabezas, that's Port Cabezas, the Nicaraguan president at the time said to the mercenaries, when you're coming back from Cuba after destroying the revolution, all I want is Fidel Castro's beard. In other words, they would kill Fidel Castro, and the president said he just wanted Fidel Castro's beard. Well, Fidel Castro said to the Nicaraguan people on the 10th of July, 1980, when he was greeting them for the triumph of the Nicaraguan Revolution, he said to them, like Earl said a while ago, I am still alive, and I can give you my beard. I still have my full beard, and I am still alive. And I can give you my beard as a gift, if only as a symbolic gesture. So when Earl spoke of being alive, he reminded me of what Fidel Castro said to the Nicaraguan people in 1918. I am still alive, and I still have my full beard. I just wanted to share this anecdote with you, just because of what Earl said about still being alive. And I want to make a special mention now of our minister, Sister Virginia, who is one of the persons who has inspired me, although she doesn't know it. Sister Virginia has always inspired me because she's one of St. Lucia's few progressive women. You may not know it, but she has a background in the trade union movement. And generally, St. Lucians who have been aligned with the trade union movements have been progressive St. Lucians. And we are just being reminded that Virginia was part of the delegation of that first set of St. Lucians who went to Cuba on a mission of friendship. Brother Roll just reminded us of that, and Earl as well. I want us to put our hands together for Minister Virginia. And since I have to be brief, I want to say one more thing, and then I will make a concrete proposal. Earl Busquets said that there are about 900 St. Lucian graduates from Cuba. And he said that not even 9 are here. As a graduate from Cuba myself, this gives me deep shame, because it is a clear sign that our young men and women who went to Cuba and enjoyed the generosity and the friendship of the Cuban people, for some reason, they don't seem to have taken cognizance of the need for them to show a greater participation, a greater interest, and a greater love for a country that has been so generous to St. Lucians. But you see, if this is the case, there have to be particular reasons why this is the case. And what we do as economists and social scientists is, when we confront a problem that we don't seem to understand, we need to dissect the problem, analyze the problem, and come up with solutions to the problem. And I will make a statement now, and I'm glad our sister Virginia is here. She's also a minister of the government. I will make a statement now about what we should do to further strengthen the relationship between our island and Cuba. As Earl said, we need to take the relationship to that next qualitative stage. What we need to do, brothers and sisters, is put a program together where for the first time in the history of the relationship, we must now invite Cuban children to come to our country every summer to learn English. And I will be writing a letter to Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre along those lines, because I'm a man of action. I like words, I like to speak, like Brother Roll Harvey said. He said, Pell is a man, he speaks and he speaks with confidence. I like to speak, because after listening to Fidel for so many years, I love speaking. I love speaking with people, I love articulating. And it is a pleasure to be able to articulate in English como en el español. It's a pleasure. But besides speaking, we also have to act. And I want to make a promise to this room this afternoon. When I go home tonight, I'm going to write a letter to Philip J. Pierre, our Prime Minister, suggesting to him that the next step in taking the relationship between St. Lucia and Cuba to the next level is as soon as possible to begin to invite the Cuban government to send Cuban children to our country every summer to learn English. So we will begin that program. I make that solemn promise. And in terms of my final comments, I'll speak on the COVID-19 vaccine. The relationship with Cuba and St. Lucia is so close now. We have such a close-knit relationship now that St. Lucians trust Cubans very, very deeply. St. Lucians have a level of trust and love for Cubans that we could not have imagined when I first left to study in Cuba in 1982. And the trust is so deep now that if the Cuban vaccines arrive to our country tomorrow, every St. Lucian who is not yet vaccinated will go get the vaccine. I know it. Every St. Lucian who is not yet vaccinated will go get the Cuban vaccine if it arrives tomorrow. And I want to share with you, comrades, that long before we won the elections, around May this year, I wrote a letter. Long before we won the elections, I wrote a draft letter that I put in my archives so that when we would have won the elections, I would have given that letter to Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre and to Foreign Minister Albert Baptiste, who turned out to be the Foreign Minister again this time. And in my letter, I said to them, we need to invite the Cuban comrades to send the vaccines to St. Lucia as soon as Abdallah is ready. Abdallah is the most advanced of the 5 vaccines that Earl spoke about a while ago. And I cannot wait for Abdallah to arrive in this country so that every St. Lucian will get vaccinated. And my brothers and sisters, since I'm so emotional this afternoon, following on Raul's emotions, I want to repeat that his emotion, the emotions Raul shows, the emotions he showed today, is the clearest sign that you can get of the love that St. Lucians now have for our Cuban brothers and sisters. And now finally I want to put our hands together again for Raul for showing those emotions. And we must take the relationship, we must take our relationship to the next level. I repeat, we have to begin to see Cuban children in our classrooms every summer learning English in our country. That's the way we can begin to reciprocate in terms of what we can do for our sisters and brothers in Cuba. Thank you, my brothers.
Thank you very much, Comrade Pell. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker really needs no introduction, but it would be remiss of me not to mention the little that I know about her, including my personal affiliation from the days I was a teacher sometime in the early 80s, where on a Saturday afternoon it would not be unusual in our effort to strengthen. Okay. All right, I'm ahead of my time now. But, all right, I've been gratefully be guided by the president that I have the honor and the high esteem and privilege to call on His Excellency Bernardo Toscano Sardinas to share some remarks with us. Ambassador to Cuba, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm very sorry.
No problem. Well, good afternoon, everybody. So, Excellent Minister Virgin Albert, thank you for joining us. Marlene, thank you for inviting me and for inviting members of the Cuban Medical Brigade to this event. Dear colleagues, brothers and sisters, I don't bring a written speech. It's not my intention to take more time in my time of take the floor, because I don't want to repeat something that you have said. It's better that you talk by yourself, and we have to sit down there and listen very carefully, all the speakers. And it's a clear example that when you see an event like this one, you confirm that Cuban is not isolated. You confirm that Cuban is not alone. You confirm that Cuba has a lot of friends around the world. There are many things in the agenda, and it will be necessary in most time to pay attention and to say a few words regarding any topic. They have been talking about the history of the Humanistic Solidarity Association, St. Lucia, Cuba, 16 years now. They are talking about 42 years from the ambassador that he presented a very synthesis about 42 years relationship. And there is a topic that is to talk about the 5th anniversary of the physical disappearance of Fidel Castro, the leader, the historic leader of the Cuban Revolution. But in any way, sometimes I think that the facts speak by themselves. And when I was listening about the history of the story of the organization, I was thinking about, well, how many years have been working shoulder to shoulder this group in St. Lucia to express solidarity and friendship with Cuba. And for that reason, we consider that today we have been eyewitness to see that reality. And today is necessary, and today is most necessary that you continue with that expression of solidarity that when you start the organization 16 years ago. And precisely because in this moment where all the reason because that you create the organization still, and Cuban, as you was mentioned at the beginning by Merlin, so we are suffering the economic, financial, and trade blockade against Cuba imposed by the U.S. There is a lot of slanderous and campaign, political and communicational operation addressed toward against Cuba. And so, in this moment, they have the possibility to present the other side of the coin, to present and to talk about the reality in Cuba is important. When I said the fattest part by itself, I was thinking about the health care when you mentioned the health care. And I was thinking that, well, what happened at the beginning of 1959, we were talking about the life expectancy. The life expectancy in Cuba in that time was 34.9 per 1,000 life births in that time. But what happened in 2019? The life expectancy is 4.9 per 1,000 life birth for children under 1 year old. When we're talking about the life expectancy, the infant mortality rate, I want to say. The infant mortality rate in Cuba was in 1959 34.9 and 2018 was 4.9. The life expectancy in 1959 was 55 years for both sexes. Now we have a life expectancy in Cuba of 78.8 for both sexes. We are talking about the number of doctors, something that was mentioned here. So at the beginning of the triumph of the revolution, 1959, we have 6,000 doctors. 50% of them left Cuba as a consequence of the policy of brain drain, and we had only 3,000 doctors. 2018, 2019, so the figure is 171,000 doctors that we have graduated. It means that if possible, it has been possible to graduate around 57 for everyone who left Cuba in the 1959, 1960, 1961. We were talking about the university in Cuba in that period. We have only 2 universities in the country. One in Havana, other one in Santiago de Cuba. Now we have more than 50 universities and other centers all around the island, and to the municipal level include. And so when we mention that figures, it's in order to show that is Cuba today, and the Cuban that you are expressing day by day solidarity, and you are expressing day by day support to Cuba. And we are talking about the other area, like the export field. Recently, Cuba sent to Tokyo, the Olympic Games, a small delegation, 69 athletes. So in that time, Cuba reached the 14th place in the ranking Olympic list. So the delegation won 7 gold medals, 3 silver medals, and 5 bronze medals. What it means that if you compare the composition of the delegation and the gold medal won, it means that around 1 gold medal for every 10 who attended to the Olympic game. So other example about the possibility that the development of the sport and the possibility to Cuba represent not only Cuba, but the Caribbean country in the Olympic game position. And today, it was mentioned also regarding how is Cuban dealing with the pandemic and the possibility that Cuba have developed 5 candidates of vaccine. 3 of them, they are applied as a vaccine. And in this moment, it has been possible that around 80% of the vaccinated population in Cuba have been already vaccinated fully. So we are talking about 8.9 million inhabitants, more or less. So it means that it's possible to mention some figures, some facts, very briefly, very in the short time, but it's something that it would be impossible to see without the historical leader of the Cuban Revolution. And for that reason, we always say that in this case, the historical leader of the Cuban Revolution is present. The historical leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro, is future. And so he is in those figures that we have mentioned, and he, for that reason, we said that he's present. And when he said that he's present, even in this room, when I see the Cuban Medical Brigade that is in St. Lucia, that is with us in this event, in this forum, and it's other expression that the Fidel Castro is a leader of the Cuban Revolution, is present in any activity, in any task that we are carrying on in the Cuban Revolution process. And for that reason, I would like to use the time to once again to tell thank you for the association, for those expressions of solidarity during the 16 years, and for the commitment to continue to support the Cuban people, to continue to express the solidarity with the Cuban Revolution, and we continue to work shoulder to shoulder in order to express the reality about Cuba and to strengthen the relationship between our people, between people St. Lucia, people to Cuba, Cuban people, St. Lucia people. Once again, thank you for all of those who speak before to me, who take the floor, for the expression of solidarity, the confidence, the gratitude, and the support of the Cuban people. So, once again, thank you all of you.
Dear Nada, Mr. Ambassador, a very distinct pleasure to have you in that sort of family setting. Not many St. Lucians get to interact or to see an ambassador face to face. The average St. Lucian only come interact with an ambassador via the television screen, so we are so fortunate. Just want to put certain things in perspective, some observations. We have people through thoughts, words, and actions who are always so supportive of our association is unbelievable. And how could we have missed at least one of the less than 9 Cuban graduates out here today? There is one in particular who is always supportive, does anything we ask her to do in thoughts, words, and deed. Dr. Stanley, I think it is. How could I have missed you, Dr. Stanley? Okay? And also, in the last 40 years, or for over 40 years, there's been one country we've had bilateral relations with, and unfortunately, is less than a footprint now, if there is such a diplomatic expression that can be used. They have been involved in a lot of our activities, sometimes jointly with Cuba. I speak of none other than the Venezuelan representative out here. And I'm hoping through diplomatic channels we can get back to seeing or hearing names like the Venezuelan Cooperation Center again as a place where we even used to have activities, where some of us had our first Spanish classes, where some people did music. So we are hoping that despite the international pressure, Venezuela will be a household name again. They have certainly been involved in a lot of activities. He is an icon in many of our activities. I say all of that, ladies and gentlemen, to be right back on track where I ought to have been in saying that another person that has had over 40 years experience in her contribution to the development of St. Lucia by way of a teacher, a principal, a president of the St. Lucia Teachers Union, would have seen the growth and development of the credit union, the Teachers Credit Union in St. Lucia, probably has millions of dollars in it, from 1979 and beyond through all the strife. I certainly remember the Saturdays when I, as a teacher and a shop steward of the Beaufort teachers, had to attend trade union classes. And later on, it served me in good stead when I had the option of choosing trade unionism and also labor law. That was already a foot in the right direction. And moreover, I particularly remember when we had our fundraising activities, Women's Day, and on one occasion we called just women from the audience to say something, and there she was again, just volunteering and coming up to say something. Enormous experience, not just as president of the Teachers Union, as president of Caribbean Union of Teachers, but I'm sure she would have had association with the World Federation of Teachers. I think there's such a group. Notwithstanding that, ladies and gentlemen, it is always a pleasure to welcome persons who have made enormous contributions to St. Lucia, whether it's in the public sector or the private sector or just voluntarily. And so, having said that, you know, it is with pleasure that I call on the Honorable Minister. It is a fait accompli on a Saturday afternoon, even in these difficult times, to get a minister. So I call on the Honorable Dr. Hoyot to address us.
Sometimes you wonder who that person is. First of all, let me recognize the protocol established, but I still want to point out and recognize His Excellency Ambassador Bernardo Toscano Sardinas, President of the St. Lucia, not St. Lucia, it's the Humanistic Solidarity Association. The speakers who went ahead of me, I recognize your presence, and our esteemed guests, good afternoon. Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon to all. It is indeed an honor for me to extend greetings to the St. Lucia Humanistic Solidarity Association on this very special occasion, where you celebrate 16 years of existence and achievement as an organization. Notwithstanding your birth, and I think it was stated clearly, that the relationship between St. Lucia and Cuba predates your existence. And this relationship actually gave rise to your establishment and longevity over the years. I address you today on behalf of the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, and the other cabinet ministers. The Prime Minister has asked me to express his apology for not being here, because he really wanted to be here today, as he is leaving the state to attend another prior engagement. He also stated that he has complete confidence that I will be able to express his sentiments and that of his other cabinet colleagues. Let me thank those who spoke earlier and gave me due recognition for my contribution with the relationship that has been forged between Cuba and St. Lucia. to today, Mario Michel, our esteemed judge, called me Virginia, because I always knew my name as Virginia. But when I went to Cuba in 1978, I was called Virginia, and he has been calling me that name for the last 40-something years. Today we have a 3-in-1, and I added a 4th. We have the 16th anniversary of the Humanistic Solidarity Association. We have the 5th anniversary of the passage of the life, and we say into the next world, of our esteemed leader from Cuba, Fidel Castro, and we celebrate 42 years of diplomatic relations between St. Lucia and Cuba. But we also have a 42-year celebration here, because it was in 1979, that was the same year that the public servants in St. Lucia went on the longest strike in St. Lucia, and that was for 59 days. And I was in the middle of that strike. So I came from Cuba with all the energy of the revolution, and we had it right here, where we actually improved the quality of life, working conditions for public servants, as well as their salaries. I like to give my story because my salary was about 300 EC dollars, that's just over 100 US. And after the strike, it went to $600. And I got a back pay of $3,000. And from that time, I have never been broke in my life. So that was the result of a struggle. The Prime Minister asked me to let you know that he asked you to be patient. Yesterday was just 4 months since the Labour Party was elected to office. And he said it is not 4 years, it's not 40 years. However, we still have to move with haste. And I can describe the government of the St. Lucia Labour Party as a team. Based on my experience there during the last 4 months, we have no Ayatollah leader. Any member of the team can play the game equally well. So we are team players. And we have our own revolution internally, because we have a lot of things to do for St. Lucians and our partners. And this is why we will stick to our theme, putting you first. And to come here today, I had to put the Humanistic Solidarity Association first. Because yesterday I was in this very room discussing budget. And you only budget when you have money. Cuba and St. Lucia have enjoyed over 4 decades of friendship, diplomatic relation, cooperation, and mutual partnership. On behalf of the government and people of St. Lucia, I wish to congratulate the Humanistic Solidarity Association on its 16th anniversary, and the government and the people of Cuba for their achievements over the years. Of equally great importance today is our recognition of the 5th anniversary of the death of the historical leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro. The government and people of St. Lucia will remain eternally grateful for the tremendous support we have received from Cuba. And I don't want to repeat what has been said. We have heard it over and over, that Cuba has transformed the landscape in St. Lucia. I need to mention just a few of the most critical fields where Cuba has played a major role in our national development, namely education and health. And the livelihood of a nation is its human resource. And when I went to Cuba in 1978, and I saw what Cubans placed emphasis on, once a government places emphasis on education and health, that government is on the right path. We have hundreds, close to 1,000 St. Lucians who are fortunate, who have been fortunate, and who continue to be fortunate to have benefited by having access to further and higher education in Cuba. Many St. Lucians would not have dreamt of going to a university if it was not for Cuba. And today we are harvesting the fruits of this great investment in our people, especially the youth and women. Many persons have returned as nurses, doctors, architects, teachers, sports experts, just to name a few. They are just above board. Cuba has extended its solidarity to many countries around the globe. And this government and the people of Cuba did, the government and people of Cuba did in spite of decades of embargo imposed on them. The limited resources they had, they shared it with their brothers and sisters across the globe. The government and people of St. Lucia continue to admire the courage of the people of Cuba. St. Lucia, like many CARICOM neighbors, stands firm with the government and people of Cuba as they continue to defend their rights and freedom as a sovereign state. It would be remiss of me if I did not highlight my keen interest, love, and admiration of the great Fidel Castro, who liberated the people of Cuba from oppression of capitalism, of the superpowers in the North and the rest of the Americas. Comrade Earl mentioned that journey we took in 1978. We flew into Jamaica and we entered in Cuba by boat. It was like the grandma going into Cuba for the revolution. We anchored in Santiago and we took bus. There were caravans of coasters from Santiago to Havana. And we went right along the length of Cuba. And what amazed me at the time was when I saw the small houses, and every house had a lot. And the principle of the government was that once you have a home, you must have a space to have your garden. So everybody had access to land where they could cultivate and grow something for them to eat. That was the time I first visited Cuba. And as I mentioned earlier, I was taken aback when I heard what was happening in Cuba in education. And they said the Cuban government at the time, when I understood that, they said every child must go to school, because the Cuban government was providing books, they had a doctor in the school, they gave them food in the school, they gave them everything they needed. The parents had no excuse for not sending the children to school. And if a parent did not send a child to school, they would go and arrest that parent. That is what I call good governance. I first visited Cuba, and the memories of Fidel Castro has stayed with me. And having learned of the way he fought for his people. This has lived with me for many decades. I was so inspired by Fidel Castro that I named my one and only son Fidel in honor. He became one of the few, my son, who benefited from further and higher education and has returned to serve his country in St. Lucia. So when he left to go to Cuba, I said, you're going back to Cuba because that's where I got that name for you. Let me welcome the Cuban ambassador. You are among great friends, and this, the Humanistic Solidarity Association is your point of greatest contact. They will even spoil you. But I'm telling you, they are going to take very good care of you, and you will enjoy the hospitality of the St. Lucian people. I can guarantee you that. We are among the most friendly set of people on the whole planet. Let me congratulate you for having taken up this assignment, and I can assure you that I wish you well. You will do us proud, you will do Cuba proud, and we will continue to forge our relationship. I suppose the next time I meet you, it will be in your official capacity, and I will meet you as the minister. So we have to talk about bilateral relations and strengthening the partnership. There is one thing that came out from the messages that preceded my address, and that was the call for the government of St. Lucia to take some action. I can assure my audience, I have told the Prime Minister, don't let me represent him, because I will say everything I have to say. But I can give you the assurance that the government of St. Lucia is committed to its relationship with Cuba. We have to strengthen the relationship. There is scope for growth. There is scope for development. And when I make a commitment on behalf of the government, it is because that I express the sincerity and the way the government is genuine about its relationship. And that is why we go back to putting you first. The Labour Party government will strengthen its relationship with Cuba, will recognize Cuba for its contribution, and Comrade Pell, we will take up your challenge. I can assure you that when you write to the Prime Minister, remember to copy it to me. Because it's a team, and if he missed the ball, then I have to push it in the goal, right? And I can also assure you that when I make a commitment on behalf of the government, the Prime Minister is not here, my colleagues are not here. It's just a matter of one more day before I let them know what transpired here. And when I sit in cabinet, I have the same energy that I have out there. I don't play one game outside there, and when I go inside there, I play another game. And some people, I tell them, when you see I cannot get what I want, I will jump on the table, but I will get it. We have to be forceful. The people have given us a heavy mandate. The expectations are very high. However, we just want to reassure them that the little that we have, the little resources that we have access to, we will send it to the right target. We are targeting the poorest of the poor. And COVID-19 has not been nice to us and the rest of the world. Poverty in a lot of areas in St. Lucia is at its extreme. And the Prime Minister is committed to allocating the resources that he has at his disposal to the people who need it most. And we are on his case, and he's on our case, and we have to manage the people's resources with transparency. We have to be fair, and we have to ensure there is equity before we can achieve equality. As a founding member of the Humanistic Solidarity Association, one of the pioneers of the St. Lucia Cuba Association, together with Comrade Earl and the crew, we were the visionaries at the time, and we are happy that after 42 years, you have taken it to the next level. We are there to give you all the support, and I will let my government put whatever resources we have to give you all the support that you need to continue to grow from strength to strength. I want to tell you that this afternoon is a big day. It's a big day for St. Lucia. It's a big day for Cuba. And I can guarantee you that you will see greater things coming from the government of St. Lucia. And with my passion and my commitment, you have one, I can assure you, you have at least one soldier inside. We must not always fight from the outside. You must have a soldier in the inside. And that is a challenge I have had in the trade union movement, where my trade unionist said, once you go into politics, they feel betrayed. That means you are no longer on the side of the worker. You are now with the employer. And I told them, a great trade unionist told me, you cannot always have everybody on the outside, making noise and chanting. There must be somebody on the inside. And when they stay out and they cry and they march, I have to be inside and tell the Prime Minister, did you hear them? We have to respond to them. We have to engage them. And I believe in policies, what we call bottom-up. I do not believe in policies top-down. You cannot have policies for persons if they are not part of the discussion. If you involve them in the discussion, when it comes to implementation, it makes life a lot easier. They take ownership because they had a say in it. And I will insist that I will not want my government to make pronouncement unless they engage the persons who are so affected. And coming out of this big meeting here, we will definitely engage you in a one-on-one meeting so that we begin to map the way forward for this association and begin to work. Okay? I learned in 1978, Cuba si, Yankee no. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for your contribution, and also I take the opportunity to thank you for your outstanding contribution to the development of St. Lucia, public and private sector, particularly as a teacher, even more as a trade unionist, and above all, as an outstanding woman in this society. I think it's almost fair to say that the ladies have outweighed the men this afternoon, with the Honorable Minister, the Madam President, Dr. Stanley, and then there was Dr. Mafre. And here we have another outstanding lady in terms of our special events, who will be coming out to do what is we regard as a vote of thanks. But I would just like to remind the Honorable Minister that it would be difficult for you to turn down or to find an excuse not to be available at our next event of that nature. And we take you as we take you at your word when you said that the Prime Minister couldn't be there, because he had always attended a lot of our activities of that nature, even online. So we consider it a coup, particularly when I talk to my colleagues in the other Caribbean islands and they tell me, boy, as a Kiwanis group or as a Rotary group, you all can get a minister on a Saturday to attend. So we are proud that we can get you and have the presence of outstanding persons like Ambassador Severin, Earl, Brother Harvey, Dr. Williams and his wife, outstanding contribution to education. He was my principal at Beaufort Secondary School, and above all, his continued work in archaeology, etc. Angie, we recognize you, and South Committee, also a pioneer in visiting Cuba, Thelbert Feebles. I'm just buying time there as they're getting the refreshments together, and even Alan is involved in that. Alan, are you ready? Comrade Alan, another trade unionist, I suspect you'll be speaking in the same mold. So ladies and gentlemen, for the vote of thanks, Ms. Alan Renee to do that.
We are doing a special presentation.
You want to give us a presentation for the group?
Yes.
Angie's birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday, Angie.
Thank you.
Presentation,
Just thank you for the little patience. Today, as you all know, we celebrated our 16th anniversary. Actually, it was on the 28th of August, which we celebrated our 16th anniversary. However, because of the pandemic and curfews, we had to postpone the activity. But for our 16th anniversary, we decided that we would honor some of our founding members. It is something that we want to do yearly. We cannot do all one time, but we have decided every year we will be recognizing the persons who have contributed and who are mourners. This will be done every year. Last year in December, we all heard about Rosanna and Cuthbert. We also acknowledge them with the presentation or something. So they have been there a long time. However, we have past executive members among us, in the persons of Gregor Williams. Gregor Williams, stand up, please. Gregor Williams. On the main executive, we have Maurice Moffat. We have Brother Vellum John. We have Brother Vellum John. Those are the members who, when I joined the association, I used to be sitting with them at the table. And of course, we have the president himself, Brother Roy Harvey. We have all of that, but there is also other persons who have made the association worthwhile. There are persons who we have there supporting us, as they would say, from all avenues. For example, our Honorable Minister, it is so proud, we are so proud to have a minister, founding member of our association now, as she said, in the inside, so she could look out for us. So I feel very honored and proud that one of our members, and I could assure you, she used to be in our activities. Yes. International Women's Day, she was there. And I'm positive if I used to call her more often, she would have been there for us. There are many other persons who are there. Many other persons who we could call on any time. For example, Dr. Stanley, she's there with us. Anytime I call on her, she's there. And there are many others. We have our Francis Elliott there, who is always a supportive person. Apart from our executive who are there with us, we have Cyril Mangal, we have Selva, our second vice president. We have Teddy Feebles there with us. Well, Comrade Pell, who needs no introduction. You know, all of those people, without the association, it would not be alive. So everybody is counted. And the many other supporters, whether it be for declaration, whether it to coming on, giving a helping hand, they are there with us. We cannot make it happen. We would like to acknowledge everybody. But on the 16th anniversary, we said we're going to recognize 6 persons. We have somebody who is always there with us. He's actually president of the China Association. He's always with us, so I'm not sure which association he's president to, because he's always with us, so I think he's with us. I'm not sure if he's, what's the position, but he's always with us. And this is no other than Earl Bousquet. Earl Bousquet is there with us. He is just always there. We also have Brother Gregor's wife, who have also been on the executive. She has been on the executive before, I think in the position as assistant secretary. Stand up, let them see. So everybody, we have a plan, and everybody will be recognized at the appropriate time. But today we have chosen 6 persons to mark our 16th anniversary. So I called on Brother Gregor Williams to receive an award of appreciation for your services. And maybe, Minister, you could help me to of course, from our hearts for your work, your contribution to the association, we would like to award you with this award of appreciation. Thank you very much for your services. Thank you very much.
The systems of my systems were as strong as they used to. I could share some of them.
Sure.
The first one was the latest one, the award of the Minister and name of some, what was his name? Fidel. But I think I had an even bigger award because I was principal of the school before. I'm pretty proud that that's true. So at one of the assemblies, I gave up the nonsense that comes through tonight. So one of them stood up and said, making his Castro. So up to today, the students still call me Castro. And a bit of our history. St. Lucian's lived at the Panama Canal. That is not well known. But when the Panama Canal was closed, because there were also Cubans working there, they were sent back to Cuba. But St. Lucian's also went back to Cuba to work on the Philippines. So St. Lucian's had made a contribution to Cuba. Okay. So all these nice things we say about Cuba, we're just returning what was done to us in the past. Thank you very much.
We now call on Brother Earl Bousquet, the Ambassador Severin, you can assist me. Bousquet, on behalf of the association, it is our sign of appreciation for all the work you are doing for the association. I know you're one person I could call on. I have no respect for time. People will know by now because I would send something 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And one thing I could tell you, when I do contact Earl anytime, he will respond. So thank you for that and all the numerous things you're doing behind the scenes for us. Thank you. I now call on Brother Bell and John. Brother John, on behalf of the association and for all the work you did for the association, especially for the release of the Cuban 5. People may not know. He wrote to the President of the United States and he never stopped writing letters left, right, and center. Some of them are there for the record. But the men you are seeing there today, they have been there. They have been there at the forefront. Now they're not with us as before, because for many reasons. But what they have done every day, I reflect, and they could tell you, anytime the association have something, when I don't hear anything, they don't look at the emails, I call them on the phone because I know they would probably not look at the email. So I call and say, hello, this is Marlene, and they're always so very happy when I call. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We do appreciate all what you have done for the association and continue to do. Thank you.
This writing odyssey of mine, and in retrospect, I underestimated woman power. All my letters were addressed to Obama. It should have been addressed to Michelle.
But also, I want you to stay, Brother Bellon. I will come. Also, a founding member of the association was also his brother, who was the former mayor of Castries, a founding member of the Humanistic Solidarity Association. And because he was not feeling well, he could not be with us today. So I don't know if you will accept it or not. Okay? But this this is also for his brother Bertrand, who served in different capacities. But he extended his best wishes and was not feeling well. But on behalf of the association, please express our deepest gratitude. So you have to back. Brother Morris Moffat, please come up. I will call on our dear friend, Brother Juan, from Venezuela, who have been with us for many years.
Very good friend of mine.
I know. Brother Morris, as our PRO, Brother Morris was our PRO on the executive, and a good PRO. I miss him dearly. I always call. I miss their presence, honestly, in the association. And I tell them that all the time. And anytime I have something, I pick up the phone and I call them. And Brother Morris is one of those persons when I call, your little sister Marnie. Thank you, Brother Morris, for all the hard work you have done.
Thank you for all the hard work you've done for the association. I always find this young lady, I call her a young lady, and she'll always be a young lady to me, is the hardest working young lady that I know. I'll just say one more thing. I had not heard of our minister before election, but since then, I think you represent woman power.
Thank you, Brother Morris.
Can I
Of course, I love you a lot.
keep up the good work? God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah, bye.
Thank you very much, Mali. And Madam Minister, you are a friend of mine because anything else. I keep any friend of Cuba.
Well, people, last but not least, is our very own Brother Harvey. To be honest with you, Brother Harvey was on the executive. He was grooming me to take over the presidency of the association. And that is a fact. He rings in my ear all the time. Marlene, you have to get ready, you have to get ready all the time. And Brother Harvey worked very hard during his tenure as president and founding member of the association, together with Dr. Johnny Stanley, who was also a founding member, Cuthbert Richards, Rosanna, Comrade Pell, and the Lord. And of course, your very first executive, some of them have passed. Especially, I remember today, in particular, Brother Rossini. Brother Rossini, who is not there with us. During that time of the association, it was just, it was a set of people that was, I think, Fidel was all in the blood. I must say, I never went to school in Cuba. None of my family went to school in Cuba. I had no relative that studied in Cuba. I just developed a love for Cuba from the history of Cuba and from my association with Cuban people. And here I am, almost like a Cuban. So, Brother Harvey, words cannot express the gratitude I have for you, for taking the association to where you took it and handing it in my hand. I hope I will continue to make you proud, and I hope that I will have the strength to continue to do the work you wanted me to do. I always remember, and I thought it was a big shoes to step in. But as you know, there's woman power. And when you hand it in my hand, I jump and I fly all over the place with it. So it is my honor, and I'm not calling anybody to give you this. It is my honor, Brother Harvey. I have actually awarded you before, but there's never enough award. For somebody who have given so much, there's never enough.
Thank you.
Never enough. So on behalf of all of us, our small token of appreciation.
I want to, Brother Kelly's here. I want to make how do I say, not an announcement, a comment. I told Brother Pell, I will not leave the association, he's there, he's my witness, until I see that there's somebody, I will not leave the presidency rather, until I see there's somebody who will carry on the association. Did I not tell you that?
Yes, Comrade.
So morning she came, she participated, she worked just as hard as I did, and she's working harder now. Working harder than me now, but she's younger. Yeah. So Marlene, thank you, and I know that you will take the association much further than where we go. Right. And one person again, I want, Dr. Stanley, I just need you to stand 1 minute again for me, please. Because Dr. Stanley is one of our founding members. At our launching, Dr. Stanley was the one that made all the presentations, didn't you? And she too, I think we have to give you an award as well. Dr. Stanley.
I got the award before.
Oh, you did? In Cuba? So thank all of you, and we will continue to support Cuba.
I would like all the members to take a picture, a group, if it's possible, a group photo with your award, the awardees. Could you all come up to take a group photo? Yes. Yes, so we just take
Bring him. Yeah.
Ambassador and yes. It's a Kodak moment. Yes.
No women. Well, yeah. No, stay away. You stay with Marlon. Stay with Marlon as the ambassador. You stay with the ambassador. Morris, come around this side. One more come around this side.
Ambassador.
Yeah. Come there, Morris. Come there. Morris, come there. All right. One person. Yeah, one person.
Oh yes, you put down your mask. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
4 minutes here.
Yes, thank you. Yes, you could put it back up.
Okay, thank you everybody. As I mentioned before, this is the first stage of our recognition to our members and supporters. So it is every year we'll be doing the same thing because there are many persons to recognize. But this association will be doing this yearly as our anniversary. And again, Arlene Rennie to give the vote of thanks. Without the support of my team members, my executive, we do not have an association. An association is made up with executive members and members. And I thank my present executive, who Ali will be doing.
Yes, don't do my job for me. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to adopt the protocols that has already been established. I would like to thank you, Dr. Virginia Albert Poyet, for your presence here today with us. I know you have a busy schedule, so we want to thank you for coming here. We know it's not easy to get a minister, like they said before, on a Saturday, to come here with us, so we would like to thank you. Put your hands together for Dr. Albert again. Thank you. Ambassador Bernardo Sardinas, I hope I get that correct. Thank you, Ambassador, for being here with us. I would also like to thank, excuse me if I cannot pronounce the name, our representative from the Venezuelan Embassy. Thank you to Dr. Avilo Perez, the head of the Cuban Medical Brigade. Thanks to Dr. Romilio Gonzalez, head of the Cuban Eye Clinic in St. Lucia. Thanks to the members of the Cuban Medical Brigade. Thank you so much for being here, especially during this time of COVID. We love you. Thank you so much for all your help and your assistance. Thank you to the past and present Executive Committee and members of the Humanistic Solidarity Association, colleague speakers, Comrade Busquet, Comrade Pel Lancico. Thank you, specially invited guests. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Master.